everyone, welcome to another episode of our high level podcast. We call them the high level spotlight sessions, where we bring in top experts in the world of marketing and sales, especially that are very much active in our high level community to kind of share strategies and a couple of cool things that people are doing in the world of high level. And Brendan Mccauley, I feel like I've met him in person. I can't remember, but either way, we've interacted several times. He's really active in our community. And Brendan, he's known as like the challenge guy, the 5 day challenge guy, and really education as a gateway. So I asked him, hey, jump on a podcast with me. Let's talk about this. So here's what we've decided. We're going to talk about creating education-based gateways for your business. For our discussion, to keep it organized, we're going to talk about three, four different things. First thing's building a know, like, and trust factor. Second thing is positioning yourself as an instant authority. And third is building the audience, especially email marketing and lists like that. And fourth is figuring out ways to enroll people into your high ticket offer. But before we get started into that, Brendan, what's your story? I know you're out in West Palm Beach in Florida, if I remember correctly. What's your story in the
Yep.
world of marketing and business, man?
Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate it, and congratulations to everyone that's hopping on here, and hopefully we can drop some wisdom and value. I'll give you the long story, condensed version. Parents got divorced when I was a kid, and I basically turned to binge eating, and I struggled with weight all the way up through high school. And as I began to shift physically, I really started to master myself mentally. So that took me down this road of personal development, growth, training, just becoming like a next level version of myself. And amongst that journey, are you familiar with the P90X, the at-home workout program?
Yeah,
Okay,
I could
I'm
I
sure.
could not I could not do the ab ripper too long, but
It's always the ab ripper. Everyone knows the ab ripper. So fast forward in part of that journey, I ordered it like everybody else does, and amongst doing that, they had an opportunity, and that was the chance to be able to not only change your own life, but to get paid doing it for others. And then, so I say all that to say that was my first taste of entrepreneurship, and I just fell in love with the concept of, hey, I can change my life, I can change other people's lives. And so I went down this whole rabbit trail of like personal growth and what does that look like. And at the same time, I was going through, I got my undergrad, took a few years off, tried to figure out what I wanted to do, went back, got my master's. And at the same time, I'm working this, 40 job, which is great, pays the bills and 401k. And at the same time, I knew I had this desire to do something more. Have you ever had that desire where it's like, there's something else you should be doing?
absolutely.
And so I had this opportunity to basically, long story shorter, cash the 401k, of which I went home to the wife and I said, babe, I want to play full-time entrepreneur. Would you support me? And she looked at me and she said, Brendan, can we pay the bills? I said, for 3 months, absolutely. And then from there, we're gonna figure stuff out. And so fortunately, that was 8 years ago. And obviously things have it's been an interesting journey to say the least. But so I went through that process. And over the first 4 years, I learned a lot of what not to do. Um, and so my background is basically systems, operations, procedures, structures. Like, how do you put all this stuff together? And I love all the mind mapping and all the techie stuff. And while that's great and it was cool, like, to take on one client and do it, I was in this ever never ending like hunt and search for when's the next client and when's the next system. And then they have to go and find that. And finally, probably about 4 years into the process, so about 4 years ago today, I started looking at like what's in the marketplace and what is my own product, what's my own program, what's my own service. And when I started to look at it, I was like, okay, what have I done successfully in the past? And at this point, man, I went through and I got all these certifications. Like as I was, so I got my graduate degree, dude, all the fitness stuff. I got speaking certified, and I wind up with all these things. And come to find out, man, like you get all these plaques, all these degrees, and you lay them on the bed. You're like, this is awesome. What in the world do I do with all this? And so the one thing I learned very quickly is that just because you get certifications or degrees or whatever does not automatically equal clients. And so keeping that in mind and learning the hard way, I had a lot of friends that were in the same boat. And so they were coaches, speakers, trainers, great at what they did. But when it came to the marketing side, it was like deer in headlights, eyes glazed over. And they're like, okay, well, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to get it out there. And so I was thinking to myself, like, okay, that's a problem that I can solve, right? So just like any agency owner, what is going on that, you can get them more leads, you can get them traffic, you can get them results. And then I started looking at, well, what did I do in the past? Well, when we used to run like fitness boot camps and challenges, they worked really, really well. and we would do like push-up challenges, abs challenges, squats challenges. And dude, I have all these women raising their hand like, I want a
Yeah.
better butt by summer. And like, dude, we get like, 100 plus in a group. And so it worked. And then I started looking at what all the other bigger guys, whether they were coaches, speakers like Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Russell Brunson, a lot of the guys I looked up to. And what I noticed is that they were all running challenges as well. And so I started thinking, like, okay, well, could that apply to my business? And could I systematize it to apply to other people's businesses? So I tested it out for myself, and I put it out for maybe a week. I did like an automation challenge. I think we had 5 people on the entire time. Had no idea what I was going to sell. Talked to a buddy, and we were going to do the pitch on a Thursday, like fourth day into the event. And he's like, dude, just throw out a program for like 6K, help them automate their business, and call it a day. I'm like, all right, well, if you don't ask, you don't get. So we had them all on there, and I get to the pitch. I'm like, all right, guys, this is what it's going to be, blah, blah, blah. Dude, I kid you not. Paulson, I'm done with the pitch. I walk outside, and within 30 minutes, I look down at my phone and I get a notification that says, congratulations, 6K just hit your account. And dude, that for me, like the first time as a marketer or online business owner, like when you get that first dollar that it's possible, I was like, dude, could I do this same concept for all my friends that are struggling in their business? And so fast forward to today, I've been retweaking, remodifying, and I was fortunate enough at that same exact time that I went to a marketing summit, and that's where I met High Level. So when I saw Sean and a couple of his guys talking on stage, he's like, yeah, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And so I'm figuring out how do I put all these pieces together. I made all the mistakes. I learned don't do this, don't do that. And we're now on the 6th iteration of what we call basically Epic Challenge Accelerator. So the idea is to go from idea to launched event in 31 days. Dude, what High Level has done for me and allowed other people to do was night and day. And it was a really, I say serendipitous and very helpful.
I love that. So, when I jumped on earlier just to kind of map out this conversation so we can kind of stay structured, we came up
Right.
with the headline of creating education-based gateways, and you being a challenge-oriented person, that's kind of your main thing. And I run a lot of the challenges as well inside of High Level. So we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about this because I've
Nice,
seen
nice.
so many different versions of it already. But ultimately, as you watch this, just remember, results may vary. We've been through so much to get to these conversations. We're
Mm-hmm.
not implying that you're going to make, financial gain or anything like that. More than likely, you're not going to be successful. I'll tell you that because there's a lot of hard work behind this. These are extraordinary, abnormal results we talk about. But Brendan, help us understand why education-based offers work in your perspective. And then let's talk about some of these discussion points. A lot of businesses have service-driven,
Mm-hmm.
offers. They have a lead magnet out there, but they often do not curate like a challenge experience. Why 5 days? Help us understand that whole idea of why you leaned into this model.
Yeah. So I'd say because it impacted my life the most. So just even from a physical perspective. So when I first started getting into that weight loss journey, my mom was familiar with Weight Watchers? You ever heard
Yeah.
of them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So my mom had started me on Weight Watchers, and it was it was a little uncomfortable at first, but what I realized really quickly over the course of about 6 months, I ended up losing, I don't know, 30, 40 something pounds. So when you take a lot of people and you put them into one very specified group to go after a specific target on a certain time frame, and you're held accountable, results always skyrocket. And that's just, they've done studies across the board. So just from that perspective, I love that feel of camaraderie of being able to be with other like-minded individuals to head towards one goal. Because that support. I mean, like I look at the community you guys have in High Level. Like I think that by itself is tremendously helpful. And so what you're doing is it's education-based marketing with the community factor, with accountability. There's a phenomenal book. It's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, and one of those things that you've read it.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So one of those things they talk about is, having that constant accountability sort of check it. So, when you look at, I think, a lot of different marketing models, and I've gone back and forth with these, like, do you do a 1 day? Do you do a 3 day? Do you do a 5 day? I've got people that are doing 21 days. 5 tends to convert the best. And, if you look at a book like Gary Vee's, I think it's Jab, 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 Hook, I think was the name of it.
Or
It's that
crush
concept
it.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, crush it. It's like, how do you stand out from the crowd? And if, if you're a coach and they're a coach, or you're a speaker, you're an agency, like what's going to differentiate you? And most people, because they have the mentality of WIFM, like what's in it for me, if I've got all these people out, dude, I can't go into LinkedIn without seeing at least 100 messages of, hey, I see you're doing this. We should hop on a call. Like, I know you'd love my business, blah, blah, blah. And then they're just, it's to the sale, to the sale. It's not someone, I think, authentically stepping in and saying, how can I serve you? I understand where you're at. Let me at least help you to start hitting some milestones, getting some wins, getting some success. And then if it makes sense, like, let's work together. And I think the beautiful part is when you take a more of a, I'll say, challenge model or group camp or, summit, whatever you want to call it, the idea is that you're coming from a total place of giving and servitude, where it's like, hey, if you're this kind of person looking to achieve this kind of result in this kind of time frame, here's how I can help you. And you can get all these individuals that you now have their attention, which gives you that authoritative kind of position in the marketplace. You provide massive value. You give them little micro wins. And then after you've done that, and you've gotten 4 days of just giving and giving, then the next natural ascension is, okay, well, look, if you want to work with me further, this is what it looks like. I'd love to support you. And if not, take everything I've given you, go off. You've built goodwill, you've built your email list, and now you have people that know, like, and trust you at a higher level. So I don't see a lot of lose on it. I mean, yeah, sure, if this is the first time you're doing it, dude, even at that, personally, I don't care if you're just beginning, a seasoned pro, or somewhere in the middle. You can leverage online virtual events the same way Tony Robbins, he shifted most of his live stuff to a lot of virtual stuff and blew it up. Because if you got something that's brand new and you're trying to test it in the marketplace, you're going to learn really fast in a short period of time. Does it convert, or how can you get it better? If you've been doing it for a while, this is probably a different way to provide massive value. And if you're somewhere in between and maybe you're trying a couple of different offers, then, I mean, there's no better way because people will give you honest feedback. And it's like, they're going to learn very quickly, do you know your stuff or don't you? And you can't hide over 5 days. Like, it's you and them. Like, that's it. If
I
that
love
answers the
that.
question.
So absolutely. So one thing we've observed at high level is whenever SaaSpreneurs bring in trials or bring in people for themselves through education-based medium, so whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
challenge, a workshop, a mastermind, a podcast, whatever it is, if it's a educational driven medium, quite
Mm-hmm.
often those trials are pretty stable because they've been through some sort of knowledge base. Whether it's relevant or not, they've created
Right.
some sort of a relationship that allows a trial to survive, that allows that initial experience to survive. And same thing applies for agencies, right? Like if they
Mm-hmm.
bring in some folks on a customer experience and they park them into Facebook ads all day long, because they have that experience, they're more stable when they actually go into a service. So Brendan, how do you build that know, like, and trust factor? Like, I know I hear what you're saying, but like, how do you actually do that? Do I have to have an audience? Do I have to have a brand? Do I have to, look a certain way, feel a certain way, have a certain charisma? Like, how do I just do the thing that you're saying I can do to build that know, like, and trust factor? Help us understand that.
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest differentiating factor between an event that can be tremendously successful and one that can be a flop. Um, I'll say part of it depends on, I think, your market or the promise behind it. So if, for example, you already enrolled somebody into your program and this is more literally just like an onboarding sequence, that's a little bit different versus the way that we've leveraged it, where this is a chance for someone to really get to know you and to potentially upsell you into like maybe a higher ticket program. Not to say that an education based one after you sold them could not also upsell into something further down the line, but I think it comes down to this. It needs to be more transformative rather than informative. And so here's what I mean when I say that. If all we needed was more education, then that would not be an issue, right? Especially now with AI. You can literally type in any
Yeah.
question, either between the libraries, AI, whatever. But you normally don't see librarians driving around in a Lamborghini, and it's definitely not for lack of knowledge, right? So part of that is when you have these individuals on, how do you actually transform them? And there's ideally sort of a process. Barry and Blue, they're huge
Hmm.
in the event industry. So there was Sage.
Hmm. Okay.
And so one of the events I watched her on, this is how she explained it, which I thought was really cool. So when they initially come in, they usually are going to your event for some type of reason, right? So they have some type of pain point and you are going to solve it. So let's just say you have a 5-day get healthy boot camp. And when the person comes in, they're coming from in like, I don't even know if this is possible, to I can do this, I will do this, I must do this, to I'd be crazy not to do this. And that is the journey that we need to take them on. And there, I mean, there's a process really on how to do that and how to follow it. And I'm happy to break it down and give you the structure if you want. But ultimately, I think probably one of the biggest ways to help them with the transformational is through transformational stories. So it can't just be, okay, well, first you have to do this, then you have to do that, and that's it. Go home, do your homework. Okay. And then you just give them like a list of bullet points. We have to truly understand they're coming in and they probably have a certain mindset. I think one of the easiest ways to get them from thinking a certain way to thinking this new way is a lot of times through storytelling. And if you can, they always say facts tell, stories sell. So if you come in armed with storytelling, you know exactly how to shift this and you truly understand the pain points of what they're experiencing. And I can walk you through little micro wins. And by the end of the event, my goal is I want you to understand the what and the why. And if I can say, okay, like you are Dorothy, you are here, and here's the yellow brick road, and Emerald City is there. Most of them don't even necessarily have that picture in their head. They probably, in whatever vertical, I don't care if it's health, if it's wealth, it's relationships, they've probably tried this and it's failed. They've done this and it's failed. Like if you know for a fact, and I'm saying like do this with integrity, right? If you know that you know your stuff and you know that you have this perfect recipe to bake a chocolate cake and people have been trying for years and you're like the oven's too hot or this doesn't work. If you know your recipe and you can do this authentically, you can get results, then the goal of that challenge should be able to provide this golden what do you I just passing the name.
It's like a bridge. It's like a bridge
Yes,
that you
yes, the
can
golden
push
bridge,
them
exactly.
over. Yeah.
Right.
I
So I
love
can walk
that.
you.
I think the biggest thing I got there was like being transformative versus informative, right? And I think even myself, I've made this mistake with the high level 5-day challenges. A lot of times we're informative about like missed call text back or AI chat, because that's kind of the framework of the challenge where we shifted to is like, hey, here's what other agencies and marketers are implementing with
Mhm.
these features. It's the context behind the content, right? So can you unpack a little bit more? I know you said there's a 4 or 5 different things and angles that you look at. Do you mind unpacking that?
Yeah. And I always love to give a huge shout out. So Austin Ford is a gentleman that, as we
Yeah, I
were
know
going through
Austin.
it,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
Austin's great. So we got a chance to brainstorm and kind of combine the best of both worlds. And ironic, scary amount of similarities between what he had done and I had done. Um,
Yeah.
but fast forward, we ended up calling it the perfect challenge blueprints. And so the idea in there is that you have the 5 phases, right? So first you got to plan it, and plan basically is who am I going to serve? How am I going to serve them? What does that look like? It's the entire foundation saying, all right, here's all the expectations of where we're going to start. What's the shift I would like to see in my audience? So that's your plan. Once you planned it, then that's where high level comes in and we get to build it. And here's what I'll say to anybody: you can keep it as simplistic as you want. You can make it as in depth as you want. There's multiple tools, multiple CRMs. I mean, you got to find the one that's right for you. But at the end of the day, have something at bare minimum with a landing page, with an email, with reminders. Get them to show up, and that is usually always the hardest part. Which leads us to part 3, which is to fill it. So, how are you going to fill it? So, I don't, whatever vertical you're in, a lot of it, yes, if you have an upper hand, if you happen to have a list, if you have a social presence, if you have access to individuals, if you have a community, that puts you way ahead of the game, sure. But if you do not have an email list, if you do not have a social following, an event is one of the best ways to start building that and to start making noise, right? So like you guys do this podcast because it makes noise. If people are hoping and just praying to the money gods, and all of a sudden, people are just going to hop in and hire them because they got a degree or certification. That's not how it's going to work. And just one thing I'll always say is best known always beats best. So like you
Yeah.
have to put yourself out there. So that's why we go over Phil. Then you have host. So how are you actually going to host that event? What are you going to talk about? What are your stories? What are you going to leverage? What third-party testimonials? What are maybe some like little bits like uh, Joseph Aronson and his partner Eileen do this tremendously well, and they taught like Austin a lot of stuff, and even he's taught me a lot of stuff. And then the last part is sell. So how do you craft an offer, what we call like a no-brainer offer, that after you've done all these things the right way, you can say, hey, if you want to move forward with me, like this is what it looks like, and be able to stand out from just any other agency owner, any other coach, speaker, trainer, whatever that's going to be. So plan, build, fill, host, and sell. And if you do that all the right way, then that can be tremendously powerful as you're bringing your event across the finish line.
I love that. So let's talk about the second thing. It's how to position yourself as an authority. I mean, yes,
Mm-hmm.
all these people are in the experience. Let's say you got 100 people in a challenge. How do you position yourself the right way? One, to give them that experience initially, but also maintain the authority throughout their experience. Because later on, when they're in services or consulting or coaching, a lot of people make mistakes there and lose that
Right.
authority that they once maintained. Help us understand that whole piece.
Yeah, I think part of it is just through built up over time through actions, right? So I mean, you're doing the repetition, whatever that is. Maybe you're coaching somebody, maybe you're providing a service, maybe you're doing one-on-one, maybe you're doing group, maybe you're just doing lead generation and you're doing ads on the back. Like whatever your thing is, through repetition will become mastery, which will build up your credibility. I think a lot of it is honestly, and this is even why on most of the challenges, we always start with mindset. Because if you don't have it right up here, all the tools, all the tips, all the tactics, like that doesn't help. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, it'll get you only so far, but if you're not thinking the right way, if you're not asking the right questions, if you don't have that presence, the confidence that people will buy something a lot of times because you believe in it, not necessarily even because they believe in it. So you need to have that confidence in yourself. And this is why I say like you have to do it ideally based on results. Like I'm not going to go host a 5-day event on, fishing because dude, I've maybe fished a handful of times in my life. I can't say, okay, well, here's the kind of lure and here's the bait and here's, when all
Yeah.
this stuff happens because I can't speak authentically to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you really want that, that expert kind of perspective, step in confidently that you know what you're doing. And more importantly, get out of your own head about it. It's not the second you start getting into your head thinking about, well, what's everyone going to think of me or whatever, you've already lost the battle. Like your sole purpose. And I heard Blake Newbar say this one time when he was on stage. He said, you need to like just focus on getting nothing but massive results and providing incredible value for your clients and get them huge freaking wins. And if you can do that, like they will look to you as this source of like, oh my God, I can't believe what this person just gave me. This has been tremendously helpful. Like, thank you so much. They can't help but A, want to move forward with you, and B, probably talk about you. And then just see naturally, I think your credibility, your authenticity, your ability to stand up as the go-to authority in the marketplace, that's just naturally going to skyrocket because you came to the table, you provided exactly what you said you would, you followed through on it, and you didn't like ram something down their throat. And then most people are like, hey, this guy's pretty cool, this girl's pretty cool, yes, I would love to do something with you.
I love that. So help us understand the rinse and repeat of this, because like there has to be an audience that you kind of build out. So speak maybe to building that email list, building that audience as maybe like our third discussion.
Yeah, so and I get people say like, okay, well, if I don't have an email list, can I even start this up? The first time I did it, I had a list that was relatively non-existent. I threw it out there on Facebook for maybe a week. And if it's on something, especially, you ever read the book Good to Great?
Yeah, Jim Collins. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So quick Cliff Note version for anyone that hasn't. So there's like three
It's
things he
crazy. I
says.
actually, my one of my little drawers are here. It's literally right here.
Nice. Oh, I
It's
love it. I
literally
love it.
just sitting right here. That's insane.
That's funny. So the three biggest things, and I love that book. He said you got to love it, you got to be the best at it, and it's got to make financial sense. So as you're throwing these events out there, I mean, you can be great, you can love it, but if it's underwater basket weaving and there's no market for it, dude, I don't care how much you pump this stuff out there, like it's not going to serve the individual. So that's why I wanted to focus on the things I was great at, but also included lead generation because I know business owners are always going to want new clients, new leads, build their email list. So like just be very specific about the business model you're going to put yourself in. And if you throw yourself out there, okay, is there a need and a desire and a want for what you have? So, anyways, I would say start there. Once you
Yeah.
start putting your stuff out, I tend to run more free events, or I should say hybrid events, which is simply, hey, free to opt in. We have a VIP upgrade if you'd like to work with us in a closer fashion. And then you hop on. So you have your normal train during the week and then your VIP after. I'll tell you just from the stats of what I know, just so people sort of like know what to expect. And I got a calculator if you want, I can even show you on there, but just figure like on average, if you have 100 people come in, anywhere between, 5 to a 30% show rate. And that's usually pretty consistent. Now that can be a different factor across a lot of, across a lot of things. Um, if you happen to have an email list that hasn't been nurtured for a while and all of a sudden people will go and register, well, if you haven't built that know, like, and trust, expect it to be a little bit lower. If you are one of those influencers that's always on there and you got people that are smiling all the time and you throw it on there, you might crush those numbers. So like you said before, results are not typical. So I'm going to say there's a lot of dependable factors. But at the end of the day, as long as it's a topic that I think speaks to that individual, leverage whatever social channels. Like I'm definitely more of a Facebook guy. I'm probably going to start getting a bit more Instagram. So I stick on the channels that I know I'm comfortable with, and like that's usually how I get just a lot of promotion or feedback and just like social buildup. To answer the question as far as like
Yeah.
expectations though.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the key is to start somewhere on building that email list or building that audience. Because later on, eventually that will become a superpower that you don't see just yet, right? Because you'll
Mhm.
turn into a massive list where you're like, okay, maybe I have something different than a 5-day challenge. Maybe I have a podcast. Maybe I have a 3-day workshop. Maybe I have a mastermind. Maybe I have a book. Like you can start leveraging it
Right.
in multiple different ways. Brendan, one thing I have in common with you is we both have an expensive receipt for our MBA. So let's talk about
Yeah.
let's talk about what you just said about offers and supply demand, because that's where my mind goes when you say underwater basket weaving that nobody wants. A ton of digital citizens in the family of high level and even outside of high level, we go to market with a lot of offers that are not in demand, right? So even with the
Right.
5-day challenge, how do you figure out challenges that are relevant to our audience and our industries that we serve?
I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways to get feedback. If you have any kind of community, so I mean, just the one thing I've learned over time is the community is what can definitely make or break, I think, the business. So, like, I just went to a Steve Larson event, and one of the things that they
Yeah.
had harped on there was just that concept of community and how do you build that up, and that literally starts to nurture itself. And then a lot of times you can use that for feedback. I'd say connecting with other, even connecting with other guys that are in your vertical. Like I don't look at that there's really like competition. So for example, like Austin and I, we play literally in the same sandbox. And I brought him on specifically because I'm like, dude, you are phenomenal at what you do. Can I interview you? And now, I was very fortunate. We ended up like doing some collaborative stuff on it, but it's really collaborative. It's not competition. So if you can be with other like-minded individuals, they'll share some stuff that you may have never experienced, and vice versa. So like, there's things he does most of the times. He'll do, for example, pay challenges. I typically always do free. So we come with two very different perspectives, even though technically we're still trying to serve the same audience in a very similar, capacity. So leverage your peers. You can find out from them, and they'll usually tell you, "Hey, this is selling. This is not selling." I think it's half the trick. When you guys have you have events that you throw consistently and are going to keep throwing more. Go to events like that. Like you guys have phenomenal speakers. You guys have all this data and everything that you're always trying to pour back in. So guys, for those of you listening, they haven't gone to a high level event, go. Like their team is absolutely phenomenal. I got guys like Paulson, that are in the trenches every single day. Um, yeah, I think just the other thing is too, if this is brand new to you and you're just scared, you just got to start, because sometimes you're just not going to know. Dude, if I can show you how many freaking failed trial and error things I have gone through to like try and get it to this point, and I mean, there's only one class I vividly remember from getting my master's, and it was my finance class, and you couldn't get away from this guy, and he had
Like corporate
his reputation.
finance?
It was yeah, like his reputation preceded him, and you had to go through three different finance classes, and it was, dude, it was either you knew the stuff or you didn't, otherwise you failed. And
Yeah.
there was one very specific class, Paulson. He's like, guys, I'm going to teach you two words, and if you don't remember anything else from your masters, you better remember this: cash flow. And I didn't understand it fully until I started running my own business. And then when you start running your own business, then you start to realize quickly how important that is, and the concept of MRR, and how do you keep retention rates over 90-day churn, and how do you like all these other things. Um, and sometimes you have to learn the ugly way. But if you can be around other like-minded individuals that have gone through the learning curve and they can help you with that, That's one way to do it. And last one, man, just send out surveys sometimes. Even dude, even I don't care if it's 5 or 10 people. What is your biggest pain point? Why is that holding you back? What would help you feel like you're able to get there 1,000 times faster? And give them what they want. I've seen so many people that will just build something because they think that they should, and then they try and sell it only to find out there's crickets, and everyone's like, "Well, I don't really want that."
I love that. So let's talk about the fourth item that we had planned on discussing, which is how to transition or enroll people into the high ticket offer.
Mm-hmm.
And Brendan, I know Brendan, I know you hear the word SaaS all the time. We hear marketers, we talk about agency services, we talk about coaching consultant, and we even talk about, inner circles, the bigger inner circles of experience, even in person or whatever. Like, what are your thoughts on being able to enroll people the easiest way, the least resistive path possible?
Um, so I think you have an option to price whatever you want, right? And I mean, pricing is its own conversation that I'm sure we could have, by itself and do a whole interview podcasting on that. I mean, at the end of the day, pricing's all made up. I think is how do you want to position yourself in the marketplace? And like there's no benefit in being second cheapest. So if you're not going to be the Walmart and like have rock bottom prices, then in my opinion, and even just from like all the guys I've learned over the years, I'd much rather set myself at a premium and deliver a high quality service versus starting at the bottom to try and go low ticket and build my way up. I think it's so much easier to price yourself. Now, obviously, and I've got a couple numbers I want to throw around in terms of like how do I actually justify that number. But at the end of the day, if I had to choose one or the other, I'd rather be top tier because it's so much more open in the premium space because most people don't play there. I think most people wind up playing on like the low. Yeah, I'm going to use the word loosely bottom feeder, but it's just
Yeah.
like, hey, let me try and go after the really small onesie twosies. And then the challenges, and again, it comes back to cash flow. If I'm now fighting for scraps, and God forbid anything goes wrong, and like scope creep starts to creep in, and I've got all these moving pieces, dude, cash flow is going to be the blood of the lifeline of my business. If I get, would I rather have one client at 10,000? Would I rather have like a
Yeah.
100 plus clients at
Yeah.
whatever, $500? So all day long, if I can take one person, I mean, just think about the effort, the energy I can put into this individual, not to mention he who pays attention. So when they come to the table, they're also playing on a completely different level. The ones that pay the least are the ones that usually are the biggest pitas, pain in
Yeah.
they're the ones that they have like the highest chargebacks and everything else. So if I can figure out a way where I can leverage SaaS as part of what I do, not just the only thing I do, then I can differentiate myself in the marketplace from everybody else. I know I can get them amazing results. And half the time, the only reason people I think don't go after high ticket is because they think they can't get it. Like they don't have a belief in
Yeah.
themselves. Dude, all you got to ask, all you have to do is ask. And it's so funny because everyone usually they'll say, okay, well, I don't know if I could get there. I don't know if I'm worth it. You have to ask, you have to get it the first time, and that will build your confidence. And then B, usually I'll ask, well, how much have you invested in yourself? And they'll say, okay, well, either I got my master's or I invested in a coach here. Okay, well, how much did you invest in that? I don't know, MBA, $40,000, private coaching, 15,000. Okay, well, was it worth paying that? And sometimes it's not, and sometimes that's a whole fear around like money and objections and everything else. But a lot of times they say, yes, I invested in this person to get me this result, and they did. And they'll say, okay, it was really scary or whatever, but I did it and I got the results. So then you just got to kind of flip it around. Be like, okay, well, if you were willing to invest into somebody, then you know that it's possible. So why, if you know that you can get somebody else results, why would you not want to ask them for the same exact kind of thing? And here's the way I look at it. You need to provide at least 10 times in value whatever you ask for. So if, for example, hey, I'm going to throw you a challenge. It's going to be, I'll throw hypothetically, a grand. Well, I better be able to get you at least 10 grand. If I'm going to do it at 10 grand, then I better be at least be able to get you 100 grand. So, it's like I want to make sure that the value you're going to get far exceeds whatever it is you're going to pay me. Because if you knew, Paulson, that next week I was going to, you're going to have six figures sitting in your bank account, would you pay me 10 grand? And the answer is probably yes. Now, can other people say that? I think here's the only differentiator and just something for people to be conscious of. If you're doing something that's a little bit less tangible and it's a bit more subjective, i.e., I'll just say life coaching, then the one thing that I've learned, and someone will probably find this helpful, is you still need to be able to measure tangible results at the end of the day. And so I'll give you an example. So one of the many certifications that I got was a life energy coach. So it was, specifically that, like, we'd go through this whole entire assessment. We'd read what were your levels prior. We would work with you, and then we'd read them again. And so here's my suggestion. And one of the gifts I'm I'm more than happy to share is you need to have some type of proprietary assessment that if it's, I feel less stress on my shoulders, I feel less weight in my relationship, I'm feeling happier, things that are not always so tangible, have some sort of assessment so that you as a business owner can now say, hey, the average person I work with, experiences a 30% in my XYZ process. So now you can approach that a little bit differently and you can justify a higher ticket program. Now, obviously, if you're a bit more business, related, it's a lot easier to say, hey, I'll increase revenues by 30% by this time frame, or I'll keep working with you until you do. So something to that extent. At the end of the day, man, go premium, because you can always downsell, but it's a lot harder to come at a lower ticket and then be like, oh, well, if you want to jump up to here, this is what it looks like. And then, dude, when you build that email list, even if you only get 30% to show, couple things. One, most people will go to challenges at least 2 or 3 times before they buy something. So just know that. Two, you now have a list that you didn't potentially have before that are interested in some type of topic. So even if the 30% do come in and they don't buy and they go through a couple times, I promise they're watching. And so, I think a lot of times this is going to be a longer term game. And just know that you do this on a consistent basis. I don't care if it's once a month, once every 2 months, once every 6 months, maybe throw some like mini webinars in there. Just don't quit. Just keep going through it. And eventually you'll figure out, like, what do I tweak or what do I modify? I'm a big fan of PDR, which is plan, do, review. Plan what you're going to do it, tweak and modify, review it, and then just run it again and keep running the same play. And just like anyone that's, built a funnel, you keep your constant, you tweak 1 or 2 things, and you just get some honest feedback. And dude, it's amazing if you just ask someone specifically, hey, what did you like most? I'm just curious, like, what would it have taken for you to actually pull the trigger and buy? They'll tell you. They'll tell you.
Absolutely. So I love what you're saying. And this is one of the biggest like misunderstandings people have about SaaSpreneurs and SaaSpreneurship inside of high level. They think
Mm-hmm.
everybody just goes into low ticket. They think everybody's just doing a couple of $100 and they're selling a widget and that's all, right? But most like advanced marketers, advanced digital citizens, they're just
Mm-hmm.
leveraging SaaS as a gateway. They'll just be like, hey, jump into the 5-day challenge for $200. It comes with a trial as well as a challenge. They just blend it and then they sell a higher ticket behind that or an
Mm-hmm.
experience or something. So a lot of people get creative, but people misunderstand this whole SaaS thing because they assume it's all low ticket. What are some of the feedbacks that you've seen or observations that you've seen? You're like, you know what? I would probably do SaaS this way with relation to a challenge experience. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. It's interesting too. So I've gone to a lot of Russell Brunson's things, and I was a huge part of his community. And again, it all comes back to that community piece, which I think is awesome. And it's interesting to watch somebody that literally leverages challenge models. And over the past 2 events, he has harped on it from head to toe. Right? He's had like some of the biggest guys that talk about challenges. So it's really neat to watch how he does it. What I thought was a really interesting tweak he did recently. So he's like, sure, you'll get people into your higher ticket, but that's just to drive people back into ads from his perspective. His whole thing that he harps on is the MRR and how do you get them into that SaaS on an ongoing basis, which I think is beautiful. I think the trick though, and this is one thing that I was very conscious about, that I knew even 8 years ago. I knew SaaS was going to be some form or fashion what I wanted to do, just because the beauty of the nature of how sticky it can be, how helpful it can be, and that it's consistent over and over. So, which is the reason we love SaaS. A, you got to differentiate yourself, but then B, I think it's really got to be simple and it's got to be results focused. And I think probably just a mistake I've seen a lot of people do is say, okay, even if you are going to enroll them into your 297 SaaS or 197 SaaS or 997 SaaS, does it produce a tangible result? Because at the end of the day, a lot of softwares can do a lot of the same thing. Why would I choose yours? How is it going to help me over versus Mary's, John's, Brian's, and the 10,000 other affiliates that now have access to a platform, which is great. And you guys have done such a phenomenal job at it. Now, the trick for us is how do I actually leverage
Differentiate.
it? How do I differentiate it? It's all the same thing. The second you say high level, maybe 5 years ago, people would be like, what are you talking about? Dude, today you say that and everyone's like, oh yeah, I have an account. I have an account. So for us, the one thing that differentiates mine that like at the end of when we throw our own personal challenges is guys, we're going to give you this access to the software, but we do it way different than everybody else does. So we have a differentiating factor. And just simply because of how the platform's built, unless I specifically share that, like that is all IP that I own that can't be replicated. So I'll get you this result, but you need to use the SaaS and you need to use our version of it because the second you move away from it, you lose it. And I've watched so many other marketers do that. I'm like, that is brilliant because they show you exactly how to do it. But until you physically have it in your hands, you can know everything that needs to happen, but you can't take action on it. Yeah, so Sean, I watched Sean on previous trainings, and he would come in and say, like, guys, there's some SaaS companies where it just makes sense for you just pick one thing and you just totally differentiate yourself on that specific service, and then you become the best at that, right? So, and he'd pull up example after example of, okay, here's one company that's doing this, making, dude, name the price. Like it was ridiculous what they did. So there's different ways to go about it, and you don't necessarily have to be that everything to everyone. I just personally, having a background of systems and tech and love all that, knew there was a very specific pain point. So I wanted to take all of those pain points out and say, okay, it's all under one roof, which includes funnels and opt-ins and follow-ups and pipelines and blah, 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 and systematize the whole thing. Someone may want to keep it super simple. I think at the end of the day, if you can do it better than the average, other company that's out there, and you can really differentiate yourself, that's going to be the key piece to it. And the fact that there's certain things that high level offers and the way you can set it up that most other softwares don't, I think has been, for me, night and day. So that's been really cool.
I mean, it's ultimately your intellectual property of what makes you different, right? Like it's not, people I often compare high level to like Legos, right? You can build your own like pieces and
Right.
like your own solutions and colors and sizes and towers and houses and all kinds of stuff. But that's what makes you different. I mean, I feel like often people don't know what to do to differentiate their white labeling and SaaS. And I think of it as like an operating system. People are not buying, the tools inside of Home Depot. They're buying the builder, the home builder. They're not just going to go to Home Depot and just buy a bunch of random tools, right? So I do think the
Right.
marketer or the digital citizen plus high level is what makes the combo so beautiful versus just high level by itself. An SMB is not going to come in and just survive. We know that. You know that. So they always have to have you, know you, and kind of just be in that journey with you. So Brendan, as we kind of close out, creating education-based gateways, what are some final thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, so I'd say in some form or fashion, as a business owner, you got to make noise. You got to put yourself out there. So I personally don't think it matters what vertical you're in. Dude, I've done anywhere from like coaching and speaking to people that are sleep specialists to high performance, to just general B2B to lead generation, like you name it. Regardless of who you do it with, just do it. And if it's through a webinar, if it's through a challenge, and you want to go to the challenge model, if you want to try 3 day, 5 day, like whatever, just put yourself out there and do it from a place of giving, from a place of serving. And if you're not sure how to do it, there's tools, there's resources out there that you can go to that ideally will cut that learning curve. And if you can leverage really powerful software to help you get there, then that I think just makes the job that much easier and that much more effective.
I love that. Well, thanks for jumping in for another amazing episode of our podcast, Brendan. I'm hoping to meet you and see you in person, maybe at one of our
For sure.
masterminds or our conferences or one of these. I'm sure we'll run into each other, but I appreciate your
Yeah.
time. We talked about creating the educational gateways. We talked about building the know, like, and trust factor, positioning yourself as an authority, as well as growing the audience, and then also figuring out ways to enroll people into those high ticket experiences. If you're watching for whatever reason, you're not part of the high level family, I'm sure there's some links out here. You can jump into a 30-day trial as well. But Brendan, thanks for jumping in, man. Good to do a session with you. Fellow MBA with an expensive receipt, just like myself. So I appreciate you. At least we got
Of
to
course.
talk on it a little bit.
Yeah, well, greatly
Right.
appreciate it. And yeah, guys, this platform is absolutely incredible. So if you've been looking to do it, definitely take the dive. It's worth it.
All right. Bye for now, everybody. Take care.
So yes.